Or 10:13. We'll close on 14. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now, after 21 days, now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thy people, the Jews, in the latter days, up near the end of the church age. For yet the vision is for many days. All right, now we're going to Daniel 11 tonight. And Daniel 11 is by far the dullest chapter in all of Daniel, and probably why it's dull, because I don't understand it. And I have here a number of men who do. And I'll spend a lot of time reading from them because they profess to know what it's all about, so I'll read them to you. But as you can see from the names on the board, it is exactly a revival coming up. These are the names of people who are supposed to be prophesied about in that chapter. Now, I'll be right frank with you. I've never been fully satisfied in my mind that the events of that chapter refer to these things. If they did, it's certainly primary application. There's another application later. But I'm going to read you what they have to say about it. It's going to be pretty long, pretty dull, and then we'll try to get to the meat of it quick over to the tribulation passage. Now, to understand this thing here, you need some kind of a little map. Palestine, Arabia, and Sinai Peninsula in Egypt, and Greece going off into Rome. And the thing this chapter deals with, supposedly, is the events that took place after the death of Alexander the Great. And the main subject of this chapter, supposedly, is the king of Syria, who at this time includes almost all of Palestine, and runs up into here, and that's Syria. And nearly all the commentators refer to Syria as the domain of the king of the north in that passage. Now, from your studies in Daniel in the last 5 weeks, you learned when the Antichrist came, he'd be a Syrian Jew. So the king of the north can be the Antichrist. Now, some think he is, some think he's not, and I'll read you both sides to it before we get through. Then when it refers to the king of the south, they say it's a reference to the domain of Egypt, down here. And so throughout this thing, it'll be Syrian Egypt, and the political intrigues and the wars between those two countries, with the Jew and Palestine caught right in the middle. And the thing that's bad about this information we're going to study is all the information that I want to give you tonight from all these writers, any of them, James Paulson, Brown, Lang, Dumont, Adam Clark, Matthew Henry, Schofield, Petgill, Bones, any of them, comes from two sources. And the first is Josephus' work called the Jewish Antiquities, or Wars of the Jews. And the second source is 1st and 2nd Maccabees. And I'll tell you, when you get those apocryphal books, I'm just a little bit edgy. So I have never bought it fully, but I'll read you what they have to say. All right. Now, before I get into this, go back to 10:20 and in 10:20, I'll show you what I think it's about. 10:20, then said he, knowest thou whereof I am come to thee? And I will return to fight with the prince of Persia. And when I am gone forth, lo, the prince of Grecia will come. All right, in that thing there of that you studied before in Daniel about those 4 beasts, you got on here where it went Persia, type of England, Greece, a type of Russia, and then Rome, a type of the United States. Remember your studies from chapter 7. When I am gone, future, the prince of Greece will come, future. All right, now, 11:1, in the first year of Darius the Mede, Persia, I stood to confirm to strengthen him. I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia. So I have always thought that the reference in all the material in chapter 11 deals with the history following the end of the British Empire, type England, and begins here with Russia. And I've always figured all the material in chapter 11 is from a date of about 1918 on. But I couldn't locate the kings in it, and I couldn't locate the people in it, so I just leave it stand, and we'll go back and take the historical interpretation, which puts it in the past, and consequently makes it pretty dead. All right, Daniel chapter 11, verse 1. Just to show you that I'm not the only one who had trouble with this. Brother Larkin had a little trouble with it too. Notice here, this much of his books on chapter, here's 10, 11, and 12 right there, which is a fourth of the book of Daniel, and yet it doesn't make up near a fourth of what he's got over here. As he got back to 10, 11, and 12, he couldn't think of much to say. So he just followed the usual line on it. All right, 11:1. Also in the first year of Darius the Mede, Media Persia, even I stood to confirm and to strengthen him. And I will show thee the truth. Behold, there shall stand up yet 3 kings in Persia, and these 3 kings are given all the commentaries, and probably by Schofield, as Ahasuerus, Artaxerxes, and Darius. Is that in the Schofield margin? Is that given? Yes. All right. And the fourth, called Darius Hystaspes, or Hystapes, or Hystapese, or you take your pick. And the fourth shall be far richer than all, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. All right, now that's how most of them handle it. But Bullinger has considerable evidence from the back of one of his companion Bible in the appendix that Artaxerxes and Ahasuerus are all titles for Darius, and old Bullinger insists that these 3 here are all the same king. That these things here are titles that Darius bore, and they're not the name of the king at all. And he got pretty good proof. And he gets his proof from that big old stone they found over there. You may have seen pictures of it. A great big old thing about 90 feet high with inscriptions and figures on it carved out of the side of a mountain. That thing called the Behistine stone, or what? Something. Behistan. 1,700 feet high, between Baghdad and Iran. All right, 11:2. The fourth shall be far richer than all, and by his strength through his riches he shall stir up all against the realm of Greece. I was talking about a Media Persia over here, getting mad at Greece over here. 3. And a mighty king shall stand up. They say Alexander the Great. Does Schofield say that? Is that there anywhere? All right. And a mighty king shall stand up and shall rule with great dominion and do according to his will. Alexander the Great. So this last Persian king stirs everything up against Alexander the Great over in Greece, and Alexander the Great whips him, and of course that's history. Verse 4, and when he shall stand up, his kingdom shall be broken, and shall be divided to the 4 winds of heaven. And we studied that when we studied the he-goat and the ram smacking each other, and the 4 horns busted up. So Alexander's kingdom goes into 4 pieces, and the 4 pieces it goes into are Greece, first half, Asia Minor, the second half, the second fourth, Syria, the third fourth, and Egypt, the fourth fourth, into 4 places, 4 parts, and not to his posterity. That is, Alexander's children don't get it, nor according to his dominion which he ruled, for his kingdom shall be plucked up, even for others beside those of his own children. And the king of the south shall be strong, and what does he say there? Ptolemy Philadelphus, Ptolemy Soter, what does Schofield have? Doesn't say the king. Doesn't give the king's name? Ptolemy? Ptolemy what? L-A-G or something. Oh boy. I don't even have him written down. It gets heavy. I'll come out Jesus Fawcett and Brown and go past the king. Mighty king, by the 4, all right, king of the south. He says here, the king of the south, Ptolemy Soter, son of Ptolemy Meganius, that one. Now, the governor, and one of his princes is Seleucus, or Seleucus. At first the satrap of Ptolemy later, but from 312, king of the largest empire outside of Alexandria, Syria, Babylon, Media. All right. You got it? All right. And in the end of years they shall join themselves together, for the king's daughter of the south shall come to the king of the north to make an agreement, but she shall not retain the power of the arm, neither shall he stand or his arm, but she shall be given up, and they that brought her, and he that begat her, and he that strengthened her in those times. King's daughter of the south, Bernice. Remember Bernice? Bernice, daughter of Ptolemy, Philadelphia. That's the fellow supposed to be around when the LXX was made. The latter, in order to end his war with Antiochus, king of the north, the prophetical phrase, the region one prince cable six Syria. Syria gave Bernice to Antiochus. So the daughter of this fellow right here, Bernice, she gives this fellow here for a wife. Who thereupon divorced his former wife, the Odysee, and disinherited her son, Seleucus Calanius. Sound like Peyton plays or something. The designation king of the north and of the south is given relation to Judah. She shall not be able to affect the purpose of the alliance. Ptolemy having died, Antiochus took back Odysee, who then poisoned him. And caused Bernice and her son to be put to death, and raised her own son, Seleucus Nicator, to the throne. Neither shall he stand, the king of Egypt, his arm, Bernice her offspring, they that brought her, the attendants of Egypt, he that begat her. I don't know. That's it. So that Maccabean history. 7. But out of a branch of her root shall one stand up in his estate, which shall come with an army, and shall enter the fortress of the king of the north, and shall deal against them, and shall prevail. A branch of her root. In his estate, Ptolemy, Euergetes, brother of Bernice. This fellow here, who's her brother. He goes up north to fight. 8. And shall also carry captives in Egypt their gods with their princes, their precious vessels of silver and gold. He shall continue more years than the king of the north. So the king of the south shall come into his kingdom and shall return to his own land, Egypt. But his son shall be stirred up, shall assemble a multitude of great forces, and one certainly shall come and overflow and pass through, then shall return and be stirred up even to his fortress. One shall come. So Annas having died, Antiochus alone prosecuted the war with Ptolemy Philopator, Euergetes' son, until he had recovered all the parts of Syria subjugated by Euergetes. Antiochus, this fellow, shows up and reconquers all the stuff that this fellow took. This fellow here. And the king of the south shall be moved with choler, heat, and shall come forth and fight within even with the king of the north, and he shall set forth a great multitude, but the multitude shall be given into his hand. And when he hath taken away the multitude, his heart shall be lifted up, and he shall cast down many 10,000, but he shall not be strengthened by it. The king of the south comes to fight against Antiochus. His force was 70,000 infantry, 5,000 cavalry. He was delivered to Ptolemy's hand. 10,000 of Antiochus' army were slain, 400 were made captives. So the south won out in that war. 16 or 15. So the king of the north shall come and cast them out and take the most spent cities, and the arms of the south shall not withstand, neither his chosen people, neither shall there be any strength to withstand. But he that cometh against him shall do according to his own will, and none shall stand before him, and he shall stand the glorious land which by his hand shall be consumed. Renew the war. Antiochus, after successful campaigns against Persia, made war with Ptolemy Epiphanes. Philip, king of Macedonia, combined with Antiochus against Ptolemy, and they besieged the Egyptian garrison and attacked Judea. Verse 17, he shall set his face to enter with strength of his whole kingdom, and upright ones with him, thus shall he do. And he shall give him the daughter of women, corrupting her, but she shall not stand on his side, neither be for him. Upright ones, the Hebrews, says here, thus shall he do. His daughter. Instead of at once invading Ptolemy's country, he prepares his way for doing so by the following plan. He gives to Ptolemy Epiphanes his daughter Cleopatra in marriage. Daughter of this fellow here. His daughter Cleopatra given him for wife. Promising Syria and Judea as a dowry. But Cleopatra favored her husband rather than her father and defeated his scheme. She shall not stand by his side. So it says in 17, she shall not stand on his side, neither before him. After this shall he turn his face to the isles, and shall take many, but a prince for his own behalf shall cause the reproach offered by him to cease. Without his own reproach he shall cause it to turn upon him. Then he shall turn his face toward the port of his own land. He shall stumble and fall, and not be found. Lucius Scipio Asiaticus, the Roman general, routed Antiochus at Magnesia, causing the reproach which offered Rome by inflicting envy in Rome's allies to cease. Attempting upon the temple of Jupiter by night, he was slain with his soldiers in insurrection of the inhabitants. In his stead, Antiochus' stead, came Seleucus Philopater. In his stead. You know, you can take a course like this in college and spend $300-400 on it. That's right. And ask you questions to end the year, you know, who was Seleucus Philopater's father and who was his cousin and who married Bernice's brother and all that kind of business. Let's see. Well, 20. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes and the glory of his kingdom. Now I'm going to start. Now, whatever that thing was to verse 20, I'll leave it stand where it is. But when we get to 20, I'm going to start getting back in the Bible. I've got enough Philopater and Seleucus Palabali and Ptolemy to do me for a lifetime. And when we get to 20, I know where I am. There shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes. Now, I know what a tax is. It ends in X, I know what it is. A tax. Well, when Jesus was born, his foster father and his mother went to Bethlehem, Judea, to be taxed under Augustus Caesar. Taxed the Antichrist. Fellows, the power to tax is the power to corrupt. So from here on, 20 and 20, 21 and 22, we're dealing with something that has something to do with the Antichrist. All right, 20. Then shall stand up in his estate a raiser of taxes and the glory of his kingdom. But within a few days he should be destroyed, neither in anger nor in battle. And then he's replaced. Whoever this thing was that came in, he comes in, he's Roman, and then he's destroyed, and then he pops back up. Or at least in his estate, in the same place he was in, shall stand up a vile person to whom they shall give the honor of the kingdom, not give the honor of the kingdom, but they're not just hand it over to him, but he shall come in peaceably. Now I know where we are there. If it's Roman and tax you and saying peace, I know where that is. But he shall come in peaceably and obtain the kingdom by flattery. The Bible said, he that flattereth his neighbor, even the eyes of his children shall favor. Elihu says to Job, if I were to speak to my neighbor flattery, lest the Lord take me away, and obtain the kingdom by flatteries. So it's obviously type the Antichrist. All right, now put beside James Foss and Brown, I'll come quickly through Larkin on the same ground, and we'll get it in the Bible. We'll begin after Alexander the Great. The prophecy now narrows down to two of the four kingdoms in which Alexander's great empire was divided. And the reason is clear. Gabriel told Daniel the prophecy belonged to Daniel's people, and the glorious land lay between Syria on the north and Egypt on the south. So the prophecy narrows down to the kingdom of the north and the kingdom of the south, which makes good sense. All right, there was peace between Egypt and Syria during the reigns of Ptolemy Soter, and Seleucus the Cagan, north, south. But the land Ptolemy Soter abdicated in favor of the son Ptolemy Philadelphus, south, whose half-brother had married a daughter of Antiochus Soter, north, who had succeeded Seleucus the Cator, Nicator, king of Syria. This marriage led to war between Syria and Egypt, north and south. Antiochus Soter was succeeded by Antiochus Suez, north, who continued the war with Ptolemy, Philadelphus. At length, at the end of the years, Ptolemy, Philadelphus, offered to Suez, this bird down here, his daughter, Bernice. If I can get it a lot clearer in James Boston Brown, I can almost follow that. Almost. And Ptolemy gives his daughter, Antiochus Suez, north, as a bride for peace, his daughter Bernice, with a large dowry. On conviction, the Syrian king would declare his former marriage to Odysee void, and her 2 sons illegitimate. The compact was carried out, but when Ptolemy Philadelphus died, his daughter Bernice could no longer retain power of her arm, for Antiochus was put her away and took back his former wife, Laodicea. But neither did he himself stand for Laodicea, distrusting his motives, poisoned her husband, and so it's a nice bunch of folks. Laodicea persuaded Seleucus to have Bernice assassinated, and her child, out of the branch of her roots, means an offspring of recent parents, refers to the brother of Bernice, Ptolemy Euergetes, who succeeded his father, Ptolemy Philadelphus, south. Well, it's about the same, it'll go on and on. All right. Verse 22. And with arms of a flood shall they be overflown from before him, and shall be broken, yea, also the prince of the covenant. Oh, here's a vile person. He's connected with the raising of taxes. He comes in by peace, and he's called a prince. And he makes a covenant. And he makes a league. Now, what else you studied in Daniel, that fellow will be easy to identify. Come back here and pick up Daniel chapter 9. And Daniel chapter 9, notice in verse 25, the prince is Messiah, but in verse 26, the prince of the people that shall come with a flood and war. So he said, arms of a flood shall be overflown from before him and shall be broken. Yea, also the prince of the covenant. All right, now it says in verse 27, Daniel 9:27, he shall confirm the covenant with many for 1 week. So what you have over there in Daniel chapter 11 at this point is the Antichrist. And he's a vile person. He comes in by peace. He's called a prince. He makes a league with another prince and then breaks the covenant in the middle of the week. Or Daniel chapter 11, verse 23, and after the league made with him, he shall work deceitfully, for he shall come up and shall become strong with a small people. Interesting thing. I mean, it implies there won't be a major nation. Now, if it's the Syrian Jew, the small people may be the Jewish people. But in other places here, they're called the holy people. He shall become strong with a small people. The Antichrist, when he comes out of obscurity, evidently. He shall enter peaceably. Now, he said it twice. He shall enter peaceably, even upon the fattest place of the province, and he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. Now, that expression is strongly Jewish. Notice the God of his fathers in verse 37. The God of his fathers, verse 37. That which his fathers have done. Indicating, as we said before in earlier studies, that the Antichrist is a Syrian Jew. And Syria, in the Old Testament, comes down across here, this area here, and includes Moab over here. And I gave you reference after reference after reference in Revelation Daniel to show the Antichrist, a Syrian Jew from Moab. Judas Iscariot, a man of Cariot. 24. And he shall do that which his fathers have not done, nor his fathers' fathers. He shall scatter among them the prey, and spoil, and riches. That is, he'll be a conqueror, like his fathers, a Jew before him, have not been. And he shall forecast his devices against the strongholds, even for a time. How long was the time? It'll be a year. And he shall stir up his power and his courage against the king of the south, with a great army. And the king of the south shall be stirred up to battle with a very great mighty army, but he shall not stand, for they, the Antichrist up there in verse 24, the people he has a league with, they shall forecast device against him, the king of the south. Yea, they that feed in the portion of his meat shall destroy him. The king of the south be betrayed by his own people. And his army shall overflow, and many shall fall down slain. And both these kings' hearts shall be to do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table, like the League of Nations, the United Nations. And it shall not prosper, for yet the end shall be at the time appointed. Then shall he return to his land with great riches, and his heart shall be against the holy covenant, and he shall do exploits, and return to his own land. At the time appointed he shall return and come toward the south, but it shall not be as the former, or as the latter. Not as the first visit down there, or the last visit down there. Now, I'm on conjecture here, but here it looks like. It looks like somewhere here you've got a Syrian Jew. And that Syrian Jew, you wouldn't believe it, be elected as a Pope, as a Roman. And there's going to be a war between Italy and Egypt. And Egypt's going to fall. And this fellow here is going to make one visit over Jerusalem back. That's the former. And after which Egypt, he goes back again, and that's the latter time. The former and latter time. And up until this time, he's not the son of perdition. He's the man of sin. The first 3.5 years. And he came peaceably. Peace. And so he makes one visit over here, and then he goes back, and he has a war, then he goes over again. Former. And he goes back, when he goes back to Rome for 3.5 years, and then in the middle, breaks the covenant. And the next time he comes back, after breaking the covenant, he doesn't come back like his former visit, when he was just a pope, or his latter visit, when he was the man of sin, the first 2.5 years tribulation. He comes back as the devil incarnate, and goes to Jerusalem and sits down in the holy place on the mercy seat and runs the world. Now, largely conjecture. I mean, things come great for small people. Well, you know, the smallest volume in the world is Who's Who in Italy. Yeah. Go ahead.
He goes down on that first trip, that may come over that.
Yeah, he might have already made it. He might have made it about 4 years ago. He went over there. Didn't he go over there?
Yeah, he's a big fan.
Well, you know, that's true, but I mean the Pope, I didn't mean a certain man, I mean the office.
Oh.
I mean anybody in the office. Well, I got a notification the other day, somebody talking about Billy Graham running for Pope. Somebody talking about electing him as Pope. They got a joke about that, you know, when they get ready to elect the new Pope after Pope John died. Some lady over in America, you know, some real intellectual Baptist said, "Oh, I do hope he won't be another Catholic." Now, what is that now? No? Oh, so.
The Pope and brothers, one of them got two brothers, one of them is Syria and one of them is in the Jordan.
Well, he'd match it real good. Yeah, that'd match it real good. That'd be a half-breed Syrian, Hamitic, Moabite. That'd go real good. Yes.
Well, this is when Egypt lays down for 40 years. When does that take place?
Egypt barren for 40 years. I don't know about that. Where's that? Egypt being barren for 40 years?
Well, Egypt is said that there be no life for 40 years.
Where's that at? Can you show it to me? No, I don't. No. It was barren 7 years in the time of Joseph at 40.
For 40 years that Egypt lies waste and there, and no one lives on.
I don't remember that. If there is a verse like that, it'll be in the prophets. It'll be in the prophets. I'm not familiar with Miss Gleash. I never heard of that.
The reference you gave of
In Numbers 14:33-34, starting on this chapter, you mentioned 40 days and 40 years.
Yeah?
And that, talking about.
No, what she got in mind in the scripture, it'll be somewhere in the prophets. Ezekiel, all right? Ezekiel 29:12. Oh, yeah, you're right. All right, 29, beginning in 11. No foot of man shall pass through it, nor foot of beast shall pass through it, neither shall it be inhabited 40 years. That's right. And I will make the land of Egypt desolate in the midst of the countries that are desolate, and her cities among the cities that are laid waste shall be desolate 40 years, and I will scatter the Egyptians among the nations and disperse them through the countries. At the end of 40 years will I gather the Egyptians from the people where they are scattered, and bring again the captivity of Egypt, and will cause them to return to the land of Papyrus, the land of habitation, and they shall be there a base kingdom. It shall be the basis of the kingdoms. Neither shall it exalt itself any more above the nations. And it shall no more be the confidence of the house of Israel. Well, that'd have to be in the millennium. And the 40 years have to be before the millennium. I'm blank. It ain't desolate now. The millennium is more than 40 years off if that passage is a reference to right before the millennium. And the statement says, I'll gather them and bring back the captivity, and they'll no longer do this and no more do that. Could be. Yeah, it could be that. At the end of 40 years will I gather, disperse 40 years into the millennium, and then brought back? Yeah, maybe.
Has it already happened?
Madam?
Has it already happened?
I don't know. I never thought about it before, really. I mean, I never connected. And I read that thing, but I never connected with anything that we're working on right now. I didn't get the connection. I probably figured that was a judgment on Egypt in the past. Verse, well, let's see, where they are. Oh yeah, about this coming and going here. Now let me get you Larkin, read you Larkin on this part we just studied. And he'll handle it a bit different. The next king of the north was Antiochus Epiphanes, spoken in the text, a vile person. He was the youngest son of Antiochus the Great. When he was ready to invade Egypt, he marched against it with a very great army, was met by an equally great army. After great loss was resolved, and Ptolemy Philometor fell in the hands of Antiochus. Both brothers then declared against Antiochus. The prophecy was fulfilled. These kings, Antiochus and Philometor, heart shall do mischief, and they shall speak lies at one table. Antiochus then returned, this fellow here, he returned to Syria, loaded with the rich spoils of Egypt. On his march, he heard the knowing of a false report of his death. Jason, who had been deprived of his high priestly office, had made an attack upon Jerusalem. Choosing to regard this as the revolt of the Jews, he assailed Jerusalem, slew 40,000 inhabitants, sold as many more slaves, and plundered the temple, carrying off treasure of value of 1,800 talents. Again, he sent his troops in Egypt to fall again. Antiochus then withdrew his army in Egypt and vented his fury upon the Jews in the glorious land in the fearful massacres, persecution, blows from the temple, described in the first book of Maccabees. In doing this, he repaired the massive walls around the tower citadels of David, and in order to enforce the Jews, upon the Jews, their sanctuary is profaned, and the offering and sacrifice prohibited, an idol altar built to Jupiter, upon which swine's flesh was sacrificed to an image placed over it. This was the abomination that maketh desolate, spoken of in the text, but not the abomination of desolation spoken of by Christ, that is still future. It is very important right here. Note that all that has been recorded from verse 21-31 has reference to Antiochus Epiphanes and not to the Antichrist or any other person, and was literally and completely fulfilled by him as foretold. So there is absolutely nothing in these verses left for the future. I don't believe that. That's not at all.
So,
In reference to that, you might get something out of chapter 13, verse 13.
What book? Oh, well, I was going back in Daniel. Ezekiel what?
Ezekiel 13, 13.
Oh, like what now?
You said you like in connection, you had the song.
I don't see much in 32:13.
Well, it seems that's when it's tribulation. And you got that marked as an expansion.
32:13? Well, yeah, but what's that got to do with the 40 years?
Well, verse 12 will make those full prophecy, verse 15.
Oh, I see. Well, let me show you something that will mess you up. Turn to Zechariah. Now, it's possible to get it. You're very ready to get it in 5 minutes. All right, Zechariah chapter 14. Zechariah chapter 14, verse 17. It shall be that whosoever will not come up of the families of the earth upon Jerusalem to worship the King, the Lord of hosts, even upon them shall be no rain. As the family of Egypt go not up and come not, they have no rain, there shall be the plague wherewith the Lord will smite the heathen that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. This shall be the punishment of Egypt and the punishment of all nations that come not up to keep the Feast of Tabernacles. The one that's mentioned is Egypt. Well, tell me something. There's nobody living in Egypt for 40 years. How do they keep the Feast of Tabernacles? Yeah, but the reference you gave me over there in Ezekiel chapter 32 had nothing to do with Egypt not coming up to the feast. It had to do with the Advent. Like you just said. Well, something to work on, isn't it? Okay, let's go back to Daniel 11. Now, I'm not denying it could be true. There's a thing in the Bible runs this way, and I've called your attention to it before. There's this 740 thing that keeps showing up. Like in 7 days, and it rained 40 days and 40 nights in the earth. Now think about the spies search out the land 7 days. And the Lord said you're going to wander 40 years in the wilderness. And those 7s and 40s are not even, there's not one number between them in a King James Bible. Now in the originals there might be, but the originals aren't as reliable. And so what you got there, you got that thing where it goes along, so there's 7 and then 40, and there's 7 and 40, and sometimes there's a chapter between the 7 and the 40, and there's no number in the chapter. Now if you get messed up in English, you're messing with something. Boy, there's one back there, there's some back there, something, the guy says, I want to bring 7 mules, loads of burdens full of earth, that some calls, and then a whole chapter goes, and then somebody says there's a famine in the land, 40 years. And there's a chapter between them, and the number 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is not in the chapter. No other number occurs between the two numbers. So there's this thing of 7 and 40. Now, if that's tribulation, then this has to be millennium, and if that's millennium, then the first 40 years out of that 5 years may have some significance. And that thing on Egypt could go in there, see? It could go in there, but it's got its problems.
And also, people will get judging the nation, and now the Hollywood calendar about doing that for 40 years.
Yeah, you could maybe do that. Of course, that thing, the way it is, it's going to have reference to more than Egypt. All right, Daniel 11, verse 30. Oh, it's 9 o'clock. Daniel 11, verse 30. Now, this passage, it runs from verse 20, verse 21 down to 29. I apply to the Antichrist, although all the other writers apply it to Antiochus Epiphanes. who lived back before the time of Christ. But I've had enough of Ptolemy and Bernice and the Gaia and the Seleucids and the Epiphanies to last me for a coon's age. And I never did like Latin or Greek. I just never did. I don't like the names. The language has a deadness to it. It has a gar, hutos, cosmos, you know what I mean. I'm sure you Greek students are sympathetic. and the Latin is even worse. I mean I could tell which language was best, but it wouldn't do you any good. 30. For the ships of Kittim. Kittim is usually identified in the maps as Cyprus, and most of the commentaries accidentally will let slip Rome. When they're trying to identify Kittim, they'll make it Rome and Cyprus. For the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Now, I don't know what that refers to, but back there in the time of Balaam's prophecy, I think Balaam mentioned it. Yeah. Numbers chapter 24 in regard to the second advent. In Numbers 24, when Balaam spoke of the last days and the latter things, he said in verse 23, he took up his parable and said, Alas, who shall live when God doeth this? And ships shall come from the coast of Kittim, and shall afflict Asher, and shall afflict Eber, and he also shall perish forever. Asher is Assyria, and Eber is Hebrew, the Hebrews. And ships shall come from the coast of Kittim. 11:30, for the ships of Kittim shall come against him. Therefore he shall be grieved and return and have indignation against the holy covenant. So shall he do, he shall return and have intelligence. So they speak about intelligence, a branch of the service and the government. And intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant. Now, in what you had before, we had a picture of a man coming to Palestine and making an agreement, and then going back. The next time he comes in, he breaks the agreement. And when he breaks the agreement, he makes a covenant with people who are against the covenant and against the Jews, and makes alliances with people who are out to kill him. And have intelligence with them that forsake the holy covenant, even apostate Jews. There'll be some of them that will fall away and join with him. 31, an arm shall stand in his part. He'll have the biggest army and the biggest navy. And they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength and take away the daily sacrifice. You studied in Daniel's 70th week, but this is Daniel's 70th week, and the sacrifice is taken away in the midst of the week, and the abomination that maketh desolate set up in the midst of the week. So the week runs 3.5 years, breaks the covenant, then it goes on 3.5 years with the arms on his part, and the world raised up against Israel. And they shall pollute the sanctuary of strength, and shall take away the daily sacrifice, and they shall place the abomination that maketh desolate. Come to Matthew 24 and follow the corollary to it. Matthew 24, verse 15. And the words spoken of by Daniel the prophet had been taken out of the New American Standard Version, so you couldn't find the cross reference. Matthew 24:15. When ye therefore shall see the abomination of desolation, spoken of by Daniel the prophet, stand in the holy place, and in our studies before you learned the temple be rebuilt, and the holy place would be in the temple. Whoso readeth, let him understand. Then let them which be in Judea flee to the mountains. It's a Palestinian passage. The Antichrist has come back and gone to the temple, and when he does, he says, get out of town, run for your life. Let him which is in the housetop not come down to take anything out of his house. You don't have time. Neither let him which is in the field return back to take his clothes. You won't have time. When the Antichrist comes in, they're told to run for their lives. Don't take time to pick up anything. And woe to them that are with child, either just born or about to be born. The mother's going to have to run. And not only that, only women get so hungry in these days, they'll eat their children, according to 2 Kings and Lamentations and Deuteronomy and Leviticus. And woe to them that are given with child, and that isn't all. And if they have little babies, those that give suck, if they have little babies, they can't get food for the baby unless they take the mark of the beast. So he says, woe to them that are with child, to them that give suck in those days. And in Jeremiah 25:11, Jeremiah said, "And this whole land shall be a desolation and an astonishment, and these nations shall serve the king of Babylon 70 years. And it shall come to pass, when 70 years are accomplished, I will punish the king of Babylon and that nation, saith the Lord, for their iniquity, and the land of the Chaldeans." Now notice when Jeremiah said it, he put the king of Babylon for the land of Babylon. See 11, served the king of Babylon 70 years. When Nebuchadnezzar died, long before that time was up. And over there in Daniel 7, the Medes and Persians have already taken it from Babylon. So when Jeremiah said it, he used the term the king of Babylon as synonymous for the whole thing. Those things went Babylon, Persia, you remember Daniel chapter 2, and Greece and Rome. And Jeremiah said he'll serve the king of Babylon 70 years. It runs down in the reign of Darius and Cyrus. Runs down to there. So the Lord says he'll punish the king of Babylon. He says in verse 12, "and that nation," using the king for the nation. All right, back to Daniel chapter 9. Daniel chapter 9, 2, "In the first year of his reign, I, Daniel, understood by books the number of the years, where the word of the Lord came to Jeremiah the prophet, that he would accomplish 70 years in the desolation of Jerusalem." And of course that time wasn't up yet. So when he sees that, Daniel goes to pray. And he goes to pray to want to know when this thing's going to be over and when it's going to be finished. And in verse 3 begins one of the greatest prayers in the Bible, and one of the longest prayers. And outside the book of the Psalms and John 17, I think it's the longest prayer in the Bible. Now many of David's Psalms are prayers, although technically they're songs. But just for getting down and just praying, Daniel 9 has the longest one in it, outside of John 17. Now John 17, the whole chapter is a prayer. And some of the Psalms are that way, but just a written record of a prayer, this is the prayer. And there's several things to notice about the prayer. All right, the first thing is notice repetition. Now when I first got saved and began to pray, somebody up at Bob Jones told me, "Well, when you don't pray, don't say Lord and God, no Lord, no God, no Lord, no God." And they made fun of it. They said it's kind of like going to the grocerman and saying, "Oh, Mr. Grocerman, won't you grant me this?" And "Oh, Mr. Grocerman, won't you give me that?" And "Oh, Mr. Grocerman, help here." And "Oh, Mr. Grocerman." So you don't have to keep saying his name over and over again. See? Well, there's an element of truth now if you overdo it. And yet look at this prayer. 9:4. "O Lord." Verse 7. "O Lord." Verse 8. "O Lord." Verse 15. "O Lord." Verse 16. "O Lord." Verse 18. "O my God." Verse 19. "O Lord, hear." "O Lord, forgive." "O Lord, hearken." "O my God." See that thing? That thing? So there's another part to it too. Another part is when you get right down to real praying, it will reduce to that thing, and you'll be saying it. You'll be saying it frequently in your prayers. Now the word God, of course, occurs more times in the Bible than any other proper name. You get a concordance and open it up and look at the word God. And that word God just occurs over and over and over and over and over and over and over. The main subject of that book is God. And when you get praying, it will gradually get reduced to these words, and they come out about in this order. And then that, as the praying goes on, will get reduced to this, and then just this. And you wouldn't think there was much to that, but if you read very many combat accounts, or fool around men in combat, you'd find that those prayers there are prayed constantly in every battlefield in this world. By every tongue, every language. And even the atheists get caught doing it. My atheist many times in a stressful circumstance and suddenly said, oh God help me, and then suddenly realized he was being kind of a hypocrite. Yes. Yes.
And then they said, they use the Lord's name in vain, and one of the people said, if you don't begin to apply it,
yeah, that's a good way to say it. Yeah, that's good Gesundheit, meaning good health to you. That is, if you sneeze, a cold's coming on, so they're wishing you good health if you sneeze. Now it reduces down to that, and when real prayer gets on down, it comes down to that, and finally it just gets silent. And then Paul says the Holy Spirit makes intercession for us with groanings which cannot be uttered. Now, the other side of that coin is when you pray out in public, if you're not really burdened like that, then don't fake it. You see, you have that disgusting thing where a guy gets up and fakes this big burden and it isn't there. And this, oh God, oh Holy Spirit of God, oh Father, we pray. You know. And I can't tell you how to tell you when it's real and when it's not, and I couldn't tell you, to judge the brother, not judge him, but I've got some sense, I think. And after you've been in 300 revival meetings, you'll be able to pick up something, when it's coming in right or not. And I have known them, some of them will start to work up a burden. I've heard them work up a burden and actually get burdened. I've seen that. I've seen the guy pray and then get going, get on the burden. First thing you know, it is groaning. But he ever started that way. That crazy old Bob Gray, he got heating up there and knelt down to pray. He prayed an hour and 12 minutes. And never got it there to get preaching after an hour and 12 minutes. But he got under it. I mean, he got praying just a routine prayer, and then it just got worse and worse, and he felt like he had to go, and he just went on for an hour and 12 minutes, man. But I've tried some of the brethren's patience. It don't bother me. It don't bother me a bit, It bothers a lot of the brethren. Now, Daniel 9:3. And I set my face unto the Lord God. Now, it's figurative, but it's like turning your face to Him. In Daniel's case, it's literal and spiritual. Now, if you turn to Daniel 6, you'll see it's literal, because in Daniel 6, verse 10, it says, when Daniel prayed, his windows were open in his chamber toward Jerusalem. So, and he set his face. See, he's actually turned the face in that direction. Now, I'll show you why he does this. Come back to Chronicles and get 2 Chronicles. And this is why he opens the windows toward Jerusalem and sets his face that way. 2 Chronicles 6. 2 Chronicles 6. 2 Chronicles 6, verse 19. Have respect, therefore, to the prayer of thy servant, and to his supplication, O Lord my God, to hearken to the cry and the prayer which thy servant prayeth before thee, that thine eyes may be open upon this house day and night, upon the place where thou hast said thou wouldst put thy name there, to hearken to the prayer which thy servant prayeth, underline it, toward this place. 21, hearken therefore to the supplication of thy servant and thy people Israel, which they shall make toward this place. Verse 24, and if thy people Israel be put to the worst before the enemy, because they have sinned against thee, and shall return and confess thy name, and pray and make supplication before thee in this house. See, it's aimed at a definite place on the earth. Any more in there? I think there is. 32, come pray in the house. Yeah, 34. If thy people go out to war against their enemies by the way that thou shalt send them, and they pray unto thee toward this house. Verse 37, which is Daniel's case. 37, yet if they bethink themselves in the land where they are carried captive, like Daniel was, and turn and pray unto thee in the land of their captivity, like Daniel is doing, saying, we have sinned, which Daniel prays. We have done amiss, which Daniel prays, and have dealt wickedly, which Daniel prays. And if they return to thee with all their heart and their soul in the land of their captivity, where Daniel is, whither they have carried them captive, where Daniel was, and pray toward their land, which thou gavest to their fathers, and toward the city which thou hast chosen, and toward the house. See that thing? The prayer, the face is faced toward the land, toward the house, and toward the city. Then hear thou from heaven, so forth and so on. All right, Daniel 9, verse 3. Daniel 9:3. And I set my face to the Lord God. Now notice it's also spiritual. To seek by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. That is, setting your face toward a thing is determining and making up your mind to go through it. I set my face to the Lord God to seek by prayer and supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. That's an Old Testament situation, and Lord doesn't expect you to walk around with sackcloth and ashes on. He said, anoint your head that you don't appear to fast. But the fasting is found in the book of Acts. And the fasting is found in Pauline ministry. Paul says, in weariness and hungers and thirstings and fastings. Do you ever fast? I mean voluntarily. I bet you not many people fasted before or on Christmas Day. The time the fast would have been afterwards. I tell you, I would have enjoyed a fast about the 26th of December. I'm telling you, I hate it just came out my ears. I hate Christmas. I just hate it. I just hate it. I just can't stand it. The whole thing just went up there and sat in a house and just sat in a house for 3 days. Just sat in a house and ate. And cookies and candy and turkey dressing and turkey gravy and stuffing and icing and cake and fruit cake just coming out your ears. Another way to celebrate the Lord's birthday, if it was the Lord's birthday. And that fasting is in the New Testament, and I've done it, and maybe it's kind of holiness, you know. Maybe it isn't very good Baptist, but I could care less. If I were you and I was praying about something and got no results on it, I'd try that before I gave up. I'd try that. Lady wrote me a letter from up in Virginia and asked me to deal with some fella, a son she had going down to Pensacola Junior College. He lived in Pace. And there's some credit court over there, and she wanted to have me deal with him before he got back home. And I went over there once and went to the credit court, and nobody there knew the guy, where he lived, what his name was. I dumped out tracts of 4 traders and trusted one of them to be it, which he wasn't. And then about a month went by, and I went back over there again, and I found the trailer he was in, and he wasn't there, his roommate was there, and dealt with his roommate, a real nice boy, you know. And gave him a tract, and they went on back and phoned him up the telephone, told him I'd try to catch the boy, and then by then, a week before Christmas, he was gone. And the mother on the phone appreciated my trying to contact him, and she was real burdened about him, and she said, well, I've talked to him and tried to get him saved, and she said, he's a place now he won't hear me and just gets mad and said he didn't want to hear nothing more about it. And she said, I'm just praying out my wit's end. She said, do you think I should fast? And I told her, yeah, try it. And she said, well, I've tried everything else. And she said, I thought maybe that might do some good. Well, yeah, try it. Yeah, try it. All right, 9:3, I set my face to the Lord God to seek by prayer and supplication with fasting. Now, fasting does a couple of things that you wouldn't know it did those things if you tried it. And thus saith the Lord of hosts, the fast of the 4th month, and the fast of the 5th, and the fast of the 7th, the fast of the 10th, shall be to the house of Judah joy, gladness, cheerful feast. Therefore love the truth and peace. In other words, the fasting is a time of rejoicing, not a time of sorrow, and going around your face along with the horse's face, saying, I've had enough meat for 2 days. I've been on a fast now. Some of the brethren do like that. I had a fellow I used to travel with would come there and say, I fasted 10 days now. I've taken a bite for 10 days, you know. Well, if you're going to brag about it, I don't know if it does any good. And he said, over there in Zechariah, if you fast, he said, did you fast unto me, or did you do it because of this, that, and the other? Before I was saved, I was a Catholic, and when Lent came around, we'd give up things and fast, kind of after a sort. We give up whiskey, you know, and just drink beer, you know, that kind of thing. It always reminded me of a story I heard about a child that says, Mother and Daddy said to their teenage boy, they said, why don't you give up something for Lent? He said, like what? He said, well, just give up something. Well, your mother and I have given up something. He said, what are you giving up? And the father said, well, your mother and I have given up, let's see how that thing goes, giving up whiskey for beer or something. And no, he said, should I give up candy? And they said, I've got it all wrong. You tell it. Who had it? What was it? Somebody had it right there. It was about that candy. That was it. Saying, Mother and I give up liquor. And he said, well, I saw you drink some beer. And the daddy said, we gave up hard liquor, but are drinking beer. And the kid said, I'll give up hard candy and just eat chocolate. That's it. A lot of those fasts are like that. But fasting will do a number of things. Now, fasting will get you weak. So weak you can't hardly walk. And it's a strange thing when you get really weak like that. Now, you just have to try it, to know what I'm talking about. It's strange how things that ordinarily would have a hold on you begin to lose the hold. Now, I can't explain it, but I've been through it. It's strange how disinterested you get in things around you. It's a peculiar thing. And about the first day, it's just, the agony of the damned, get to the first day. But you get to the second and the third day, and you'd be surprised how everything just kind of slips away from you. And after a couple of days, you lose hunger pangs, too. Now, your stomach will start gargling and making strange noise on you, the first day. And you get hunger pangs about the second, but after that, they go. And if you can get through 3 days, you can get through a week. Get through a week. I take, milk and water, liquid, but no food. And after 3 days, you can run through about a week without much trouble. And the next thing about that thing is, you'd be amazed, and when you get weak and helpless like that, how much then you tend to lean on the Lord more. So, there's something to it. And it's like when Paul says, "I'll glory in mine infirmities, for when I am weak, the power of Christ rests upon me." See, it's like that. And it's just kind of like when you're all full of hamburgers and fried chicken and French fried potatoes and steaks and onions and Whataburgers and malted milk, but there's just kind of a lack of sensitivity to things spiritual. All right, Daniel 9, verse 3. And supplication with fasting and sackcloth and ashes. The sackcloth indicates the body torn and rent as in death. The ashes signify buried, ashes to ashes, dust to dust, like dying. And I prayed to the Lord my God, and made my confession, and said, O Lord, the great and dreadful God, keeping the covenant, mercy to them that love him, and to them that keep his commandments. And quoting passages from Deuteronomy. Under the law. Here's the confession. 5, we have sinned. That's the confession. And notice it's called out directly, just like it is, and where he begins, we, later on he substitutes I. That goes from the nation of the man. All right, 5, we have sinned. Now, if a nation wants to get right, or a church wants to get right, that's the way to begin. We have sinned and committed iniquity. Can you imagine Americans praying like that as a nation? Isn't that, what in the world is a nation talking about? In God we trust, in one nation under God, and the guy gets up there, you never heard a president in your life open a session of Congress with, we have sinned. You never heard a congressman open it.
You can pray, like in Jesus, Lord, forgive our sins. We're asking for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's making intercession. Whether to work in the sense of holding off judgment or getting mercy, it may not work in the sense of restoring everybody to fellowship that hadn't confessed in themselves. See, you can't restore the guy's fellowship for him, but you can hold the hand of judgment back off him maybe by making intercession. Moses does it. Moses goes up there and gets praying and said, now God, if you do this and that and this and that and this and that, well, the devil's going to hear about it. They're going to have a bonfire down there and rejoice and have a big blowout and call you a liar. And so the Lord didn't do what he said he'd do to his people, but that didn't mean that they got right. They didn't get right till Moses came down off the mountain and broke the commandments and made them drink the stuff in the brook. All right, 9:5, we have sinned. How'd you like to? I just wish one time Congress would open that way. I just like to see somebody, Congressman so-and-so, would you open the House section in prayer and have the guy stand up there and say, we have sinned. My goodness, man. You could bet you'll be running out the doors and windows. Well, I bet you they haven't heard that word in Congress for months and months and months, man. Sin, that's the word. Start on a day of college and prayer, each classroom begins. We have sinned. If we have started a classroom out at the University of Florida, we have sinned. We might as well say it, you have. Or, before I was saved, I went to the Episcopal Church, and we had a prayer. I've come to appreciate it much more through the years. I mean, back in those days, it was a ritual, and I wasn't saved, so I really didn't know what I was saying. But we'd say, we have done those things which we ought to have done, we've done those things which we ought not to have done, and there's no help in us. God be merciful to us miserable sinners. Now, I prayed that prayer many a time in church. But you know, it's just like our Father in heaven, how be name, Kim come we've done, you know, and Mary had a little lamb, fleece white as snow, everywhere in Maryland, lamb sure to go. And you just memorize what thing and saying, you know. But you know, after you've been saved, you know, about 10 or 15 years, that thing really got some meaning to it, man. I mean, we have done those things which we ought to have done. Amen. And we have done those things which we ought not to have done. Amen. So it all cancels out, and there's no help in us. In my flesh cause no good thing. God be merciful to us miserable sinners. That's a good one. That's a good one. But you don't see it till you get saved. Yeah.
Let me ask you something kind of off subject, but if in praying, can you refer to the Psalms and quote them if you come from your heart?
Sure. Yeah, that's what they're there for. The Psalms to show a man how to pray. All right, 9:5. We have sinned and have committed iniquity. And a slight distinction, but they're not worth going into. Iniquity is the involvement that comes from wrongdoing, and the sin is the act itself, and have done wickedly, and that's in relation to your fellow man. Not merely sin; all unrighteousness is a sin, but some sins you wouldn't classify as doing wickedly. See, if you're describing, but that too. And have rebelled, and that's rebelling against God here, even by departing from thy precepts and from thy judgments, which is true. Neither have we hearkened to thy servants the prophets. The Lord sent men to preach to them, gave them the word, they wouldn't listen to them. Neither have we hearkened to thy servants the prophets, which spake in thy name to our kings, our princes, and our fathers, to all the people of the land. True, it's a complete confession. O Lord, righteousness belongeth unto thee. True confession. But unto us confusion of faces as at this day. Faces confused is the look on a person's face when they're confused. It's this, you know, where's the turn? How do we get out of here? What's the turn? Where's the road out? Where we're at, man? It's that thing. Confusion of faces. Confusion of faces, not knowing where to go, what to do. If ever, boy, you ever saw a description of America, that's it. Neither have we hearkened to thy servants the prophets. They've had J. Frank Norris. They've had Bob Jones here. They've had Sam Jones. They've had Billy Sunday. They've had Dwight L. Moody. And the presidents just didn't listen. And the governors didn't listen. And the priests didn't listen. And the cardinals didn't listen. And all the people of the land, they didn't listen. And he says to the men of Judah, to the inhabitants of Jerusalem, to all Israel that are near and far off, even the Jews of the dispersion rebelled, through all the countries whither thou hast driven them, because of their trespass that they have trespassed against thee. That is, a nation is torn up and destroyed because of its sins, not its economic system, because of its sins. O Lord, to us belongeth confusion of face, to our kings, the leaders, to our princes, the leaders, to our fathers, the elders, because we have sinned against thee. See, that's the name of it, just like it is. That's the only way to do it. Sin basically is against God. And notice Daniel doesn't mince words and doesn't say we've erred and gone astray and we've had mistakes and faults and we weren't able to adjust ourselves to the environment and we couldn't find a meaningful, relevant dialogue with the ethnic structure in which the drugs, culture, all that stuff, you know. I got a paper the other day from it's called Human Events, a real right-wing paper. And if Ruckman, unsaved fella, but he had a little quarter of that page on there, says, telling it like it ain't. and then he had in there all these things I've talked to you about. I wish I could quote it. It's a masterpiece. And he had all these expressions that I'm telling you about, all used the way they use them. And his illustration of how we ought to talk was a sign found out in somebody's property in Arizona that said, in effect, it said, this here I'm a warning to anybody trespassing these ground. You's going to get rewarded 2 mad dogs that bites and a shotgun full of buckshot, because I'm getting D-blank tired of folks crossing my land. And he said, that's the kind of language we need more of. Fellow said in that thing, see? I was telling it like it was, see? I mean, the guy was D-blank. His vernacular, you know, wasn't saved, you know, but I mean, his vernacular, that's the way he felt about it, you see. And he had a couple of dogs there waiting to bite you. I'm going to shoot you if you cross the land, and told you so. See, that's the way, that's telling it like it is. And this fellow had all that stuff, you know, about the underprivileged classes and the ghetto not reading reaching a satisfactory communication, all this stuff, you know, some money gimmick. We have sinned, is what you want to say. 9. To the Lord our God belong mercies and forgiveness. Two things. Negative, mercy. Mercy is negative. It's good to have, but it doesn't give you any blessings. It's just the restraining hand. Forgiveness, that's positive. That's restoration to fellowship. Belong mercy and forgiveness, though we have rebelled against him. Neither have we obeyed the voice of the Lord our God, to walk in his laws, which he set before us by his servants the prophets. Yea, all Israel have transgressed thy law. It doesn't make any exception. We say all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. All Israel have transgressed thy law, even by departing. They might not obey thy voice. True of a Christian, you haven't always obeyed his voice. I mean, did you obey him every time he told you to witness? Did you obey every time he told you to pass out a tract? I mean, rebellion is the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness, iniquity, and idolatry. Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, to hearken the fat of rams. Therefore the curse is poured upon us, and the oath that is written in the law of Moses, the servant of God, here it comes again, because we have sinned against him. And he hath confirmed his words, which he spake against us, and against our judges that judged us, leaders all, by bringing upon us a great evil. For under the whole heaven hath not been done as hath been done upon Jerusalem. And that's true. That is, that city received judgment that no city had ever received before, considering the privileges and opportunities that city had. In plain words, the judgments of Hitler against the Jews was pretty fierce, but then again they weren't in his favor at that time. And the judgment of the Romans against the Jews in 70 AD was pretty rough, but then they rejected Christ. Now the judgments put against them here were the chosen people in the chosen land under the descendants of the son of David, Solomon, in a land where they had peace and plenty, and every man under his fig tree from Dan to Beersheba all the days. And there was a land where God said, my eye is going to be on that place, my ear is going to be turned to that place, I'm always going to listen to that place, and that place would have the patriarchs behind it, and David and Solomon and the prophets ministering to it. And so when that place fell, boy, it was a wipeout. And the lesson isn't too hard for America. I mean, man, this country here, in spite of the woeful picture I paint, and I paint some pretty woeful pictures, but in spite of all the woeful pictures I paint, and Brother Hargis paints, and Brother McIntyre paints, you can still turn that radio and hear it, see? And there's still people putting out tracts. There are not many of them, see, but there are a few of them. And in Pensacola, you can still go into 20 churches where if you went up and asked the preacher how to be saved, he could tell you how to get saved. See? At least 20 of them. Maybe 25 or 26. And this country's had the greatest preaching and the greatest opportunity any country ever had. This country's had the gospel preached on television nationwide again and again and again and again and again and again and again. But when she goes, she's going to blow. She's going to blow. 13, as is written in the law of Moses, all this evil has come upon us, yet made we not our prayer before the Lord our God, that we might turn from our iniquities and understand thy truth. In this context, the Word, the Bible, the oracles given by the prophets. And the moral lesson again is obvious. When this evil comes upon you, then turn to the Lord in prayer. Get praying. Get praying. When a thing comes upon you, don't say, well, it's just luck or ironic stroke of fate, or we all have our bad times. Get praying. This evil has come upon us, yet we made not our prayer. When it comes, pray. If it doesn't stave it off, then you've done what you could. If it doesn't remedy it, you've done what you could. If it doesn't fix it up, you don't have to go through your life thinking, oh, if I'd only prayed about it. You know, it's a good idea to stay prayed up and stay thanked up. Because, brethren, we may all lose our shirt in 24 hours. I mean, I thank God for every day for just a piece of land to live on, and just quietness and trees and bushes and flowers, a place to walk around in. I may not have it tomorrow. Well, wouldn't I be a consummate jackass if the Lord took it all from me tomorrow, the devil took it to somebody, and I'd look back and say, oh, I forgot to thank God for it when I had it. Well, while you've got it, you better be thankful. And then when the evil comes, then you better be prayerful. That'd make a good saying, huh? If you work that thing out. Something to be thankful, something to be prayerful. But this bunch of people here, the Lord dealt with them, and then when he dealt with them, they didn't get praying. All right, 13. and understand thy truth. Therefore hath the Lord watched upon the evil, kept it up, and brought it upon us. For the Lord our God is righteous in all his works which he doeth, for we obeyed not his voice. There it goes again. And now, O Lord our God, that hast brought thy people forth out of the land of Egypt with a mighty hand, hast gotten thee renown, recognition, fame, as at this day, one more time, we have sinned. We have done wickedly, over and over again. O Lord, according to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee. Now look at the appeal. The appeal is made, O Lord, according to our repentance. O Lord, according to our prayer. I'm not saying the prayer will fix it. It's, O Lord, according to thy righteousness. That's going to have to be the grounds of the help. According to all thy righteousness, I beseech thee. Let thine anger and thy fury be turned away from thy city, Jerusalem, thy holy mountain, because for our sins and for the iniquities of our fathers, Jerusalem and thy people are become a reproach to all that are about us. Now therefore, our God, hear the prayer of thy servant and his supplications. Well, I'm over time, we can't stop here. And cause thy face to shine, advent literally, spiritually, in fellowship, upon thy sanctuary, the temple, that is desolate for the Lord's sake. It's desolate for the Lord's sake. O my God, incline thine ear and hear. Open thine eyes and behold our desolations, and the city which is called by thy name. For we do not present our supplications before thee for our righteousness. See that thing? That's just New Testament anything you ever read in the Pauline epistles. The prayer of the supplication is not because I've done this and done this and done this, because we've done those things which we ought to have done, and we have done those things which we ought not to have done. And Christ said, when you have done all things as you ought to have done, what are you to say? We're unprofitable servants. So he says, present our supplication before thee for our righteousness, but for thy great mercies. O Lord, hear. Blank. O Lord, forgive. The spaces in there. Wait. O Lord, hearken and do. More spaces. Defer not. Don't put it off. For thine own sake, O my God. He's putting God in a hot box. Said, Lord, you're in trouble. For thine own sake. For thy city, secondly, and thy people, third, are called by thy name. Your name's in danger. So that thing out of appeal to glory, that prayer's going to get answered. We ask anything according to his will. Well, it's his will to glorify his name. And I got to close, but look at here. While I was speaking and praying, underline it, and confessing my sin. See that thing there? And the sin of my people Israel. He got down to his own. My sin and the sin of my people Israel. And let's stop there. Just get Daniel 9, beginning at verse 20. And whiles I was speaking, we say while, Old English with an S on it. Whiles I was speaking and praying and confessing my sin, not the sin of the nation only, but his own personal, confessing my sin and the sin of my people Israel, and presenting my supplication before the Lord my God for the holy mountain of my God, yea, whiles I was speaking in prayer. Notice the word speaking. Verse 20, and while I was speaking. Verse 20, while I was speaking. So prayer many times is not just a incoherent jumble or a form, but speaking just like you talk to somebody. Yea, while I was speaking in prayer. Verse 21, even the man Gabriel. Is Gabriel an angel? Is Gabriel an angel? Sure he is. So like I've told you 100 times, angels are men. It isn't a sexless angel. The man Gabriel. Even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the visions at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly. That's why they put wings on the angels. And yet the verse said being caused to fly swiftly. It doesn't say he flew. But from that there, caused to fly swiftly, and one over in Revelation 14, from time immemorial, they've been putting wings on the angels. And the one in Revelation 14 is Revelation chapter 14, verse 6. I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven. So it stands to reason if he's flying, he has to have wings, so they put wings on the angels. But it won't work. Come to Zechariah, and note what we have now. Now, seraphim are said to have wings in Isaiah chapter 6. Cherubim are said to have wings in Ezekiel chapter 1, Ezekiel chapter 10. But nowhere in the Bible do you read about angels having wings. Now the cherubim stretch forth their wings over the mercy seat, but not the angels. And yet the angel is said to cause to fly, so we take for granted they have wings. But this won't do, because come to Zechariah and look at chapter 5, verse 9, and notice when you start talking about spiritual beings that have wings, that God doesn't mention by name, you're dealing with female demons. Zechariah 5:9. Then I lifted up mine eyes and looked, and behold, there came out two women, and the wind was in their wings, for they have the wings like the wings of a stork. So whenever the angels are drawn, they're always drawn with long hair, like women. And then sexless shapes, and then the wings they put on them is a stork's wing, if you look at it. And hence the old saying that the stork brings the babies. See? That's it. Stork wing women. They got a story about that, about a colored fellow was going to have his 12th child, and he went out in the country with a doctor, delivered his 12th child. As they drove along in the dark, a duck ran across in front of the car, and the doctor said, "Whose duck is that?" And the colored fellow said, "That ain't no duck, boss, that's just a stork with his legs wore off." So they have that old business about the stork bringing the baby, and then they have jokes about that where if you're not too handsome, you say the stork that brought me made a crash landing. But it all comes from that. That's where it comes from. All right, Daniel 9:21. Yea, while I was speaking in prayer, even the man Gabriel, whom I had seen in the vision at the beginning, being caused to fly swiftly, touched me about the time of the evening oblation. The evening oblation is the evening sacrifice, coming around 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Hence the southerner refers to 1 o'clock on as evening. The southerner says, "I'll see you this evening." He means any time after 12 o'clock noon. All right, 22, and he informed me and talked with me and said, "O Daniel, I am now come forth to give thee skill and understanding. At the beginning of thy supplication the commandment came forth, and I am come to thee, for thou art greatly beloved, therefore understand the matter and consider the vision." Now he says, 23, at the beginning of thy supplication I came forth, and yet evidently it took quite a time for him to get there. In Daniel chapter 10, we find the same thing again. And Daniel chapter 10, verse 12, it shows when a man begins to pray, he's opposed somewhere between here and the third heaven by spiritual principalities and powers, and this accounts sometimes for delay in answer to prayer. Daniel 10:12, then said he unto me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day thou didst set thine heart to understand, and to chasten thyself before thy God, thy words were heard, and I am come for thy words. But the prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me." Michael's an archangel. He's not a prince of some country down here in the ground. Therefore, that prince of Persia is not somebody down here in the ground. Those are the principalities and powers spoken of in Ephesians chapter 6. 13, but lo, Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, and I remained there with the kings of Persia. Now I am come to make thee understand what shall befall thee. Well, that prayer was held up 21 days. And he got down and said, "Lord, give me the answer." And as soon as he asked for the answer, the Lord sent it. But then it took 21 days to get there. So Paul says we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against principalities, against powers, against the rule of darkness of this world, against spiritual wickedness in high places. And Paul says that, he says that soldier has the helmet of salvation, and the shield of faith, and the sword of the Spirit, and the breastplate of righteousness, loins girded about with truth, and feet shod with the preparation of the gospel of peace, and then leaves out the shin guard. And he leaves out the shin guard because this soldier is kneeling. And you see the shins are covered. So he didn't give any shin guard because the soldier's down. When he's down to his knees, you couldn't hit him in the shins anyway. But that shows that wrestling against principalities and powers Paul's talking about is wrestling in prayer. And so when Jacob gets hard up for an answer, he wrestles with the angel. All right, chapter 9, verse 21. Or 22. No, 23. At the beginning of thy supplication the commandment came forth, and I am come to show thee, for thou art greatly beloved. Therefore understand the matter and consider the vision. Now what's going to happen in 24 to 27 is perhaps the greatest passage in the entire Bible for opening the Bible in regards to prophecy. Now there's only one of the like it that'll do the job, and that's Revelation 11. Revelation 11 will open the book of Revelation. The book of Revelation will open the Old Testament. But if you don't have an understanding of Daniel's 70th week and get in Revelation 11, you may not understand why he keeps talking about 3.5 and 3.5 and 3.5 and 3.5. But if you get in Daniel 9, then you'll know why he keeps saying 42 months and 3.5 and all that. So this is one of the greatest places in the Bible for getting your prophecy straight, and no premillennial, no postmillennialist, and no amillennialist has ever gotten it straight. All right, here's the layout. 24. 70 weeks are determined upon thy people, that's Israel, and upon thy holy city, that's Jerusalem, to do what? 1, to finish the transgressions. 2, to make an end of sins. 3, to make reconciliation for iniquity. 4, to bring in everlasting righteousness. 5, seal up the vision. 6, seal up the prophecy. 7, anoint the most holy. Now he's been wanting to know how long God's going to cast them off, and when is God going to restore them, and when is the desolation going to be over. And the Lord says, after 70 weeks, the whole thing going to be over. All right, 70 weeks is a little more than a year. And 70 weeks is 490 days, and a year is 365 days. So if it's just 70 literal weeks, it's a lie. Because, why, they don't even go back from the captivity till years after Daniel's dead. And it's not all over 490 days after Daniel prays that prayer. So it must be something more than a literal week. All right, 25. Know therefore and understand that from the going forth of the commandment to restore and build Jerusalem unto the Messiah, the Prince, shall be 7 weeks and 62 weeks. The street shall be built again on the wall, even in troublous times. All right, he says the 70 weeks begins, 25, with the commandment to go forth and restore and build Jerusalem. What's the date, the Schofield margin on Daniel 9? 538? All right, then the 70 weeks cannot date from there because no commandment was given to go back and build Jerusalem there. All right, to get the date for going back to restore and rebuild Jerusalem, we go to Nehemiah, where the edict is given by Artaxerxes in Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2. Nehemiah chapter 2, and it came to pass in the month of Nisan, in the 20th year of Artaxerxes the king, that wine was brought before him, and I took up the wine and gave it to the king. You all got it? Nehemiah 2. Nehemiah 2. Old Testament, boy. 2:3. And said to the king, let the king live forever. Why should not my countenance be sad when the city, see, not the building of the temple, the city, the place of my father's sepulchre layeth waste, and the gates, the city. And the commandment was to go forth and build Jerusalem. And that's why I didn't take you to Ezra. Now when you get to Ezra, he's talking about rebuilding the temple, but you just read to rebuild Jerusalem, and so I'm going to Nehemiah.